Hey everyone, want to talk about the patch notes that just got dropped. I give my thoughts of them on the different cards, what I think about the nerf, if I think they're a good nerf, do I think it's a bad nerf, how I think it will change the deck, if the deck survives, if the deck changes, if the meta changes, stuff like that. And what I'm going to say, I think the big theme, and I'm going to say not really a big fan of these nerfs, is that these nerfs actually make decks more polarizing, make them more rock, paper, scissors, and do not accomplish what I would like out of nerfs. So we're going to go over them, and I'll talk about what I think about the nerfs and what I think is going to happen. So first, the great nerf. So the one simple brand an enemy. Whenever it takes damage, deal 1 damage to the enemy hero. This card just sucks. And it really kind of warps the game, and I think it's just a card that they're just saying this card's not gonna be an efficient card anymore, and that's probably a good thing. Some cards are just toxic design, and just the element of you play minions, you get punished, you don't play minions, you get punished is, I think, it isn't creating for a fun gameplay. There are some interesting, cool decisions you can do against this deck, but I totally understand why they want to just get rid of this card, and I agree. Next one is a Fellscare Invoker Nerf. Nerf to a 3/7, but still 6 mana, still does the same effect. I think this is reasonable. I'm not exactly sure, but I know the power level of this Demon Hunter deck is very, very strong. And when you slap this down and pull out Demon, it's still going to be good. I think, though, with the revivals and the damage, it does matter a lot. But I think this is a reasonable nerf. We'll see how it goes. But I think this is a nerf that doesn't delete the class or doesn't delete the deck, but just lowers the power level. So far, so good. 2 good nerfs. Predation, I'm not sure about. So Predation is deal 2 damage, cost 0 if you play a Naga while holding this. So this this actually might be the opposite of what I said. The low roll is not as bad. I can use this as for 2 mana. But the high roll of just playing it for 0 is not nearly as good. So this might be actually a very reasonable nerf. We'll see how it works with Lady Steno. Lady Steno is still going to be really strong. I think just using it as removal on an early minion, not nearly strong. So you play a 1/3 and now this doesn't remove it. So I think that actually can make a huge difference. So the next one we've got is Battlefield Necromancer. This is still a very must-remove card, and you get the taunt in the way, but there are a lot more cards that can deal 2 damage than you can deal 1. That makes a big difference. So reality, while this card's still probably really, really strong in Unholy, it's a lot more likely that you play it once and it just gives you 1 taunt. So and then it's easier to kill when you do that. So you have a 2/3 on board, you can value trade it. You can do something like maybe you kill off the 1/3 with a 3 attack weapon, and then you trade your minion in, so it's a lot easier to deal with. I think a reasonable nerf. Blightfang, and they have a comment: both of these discard buff last expansion, which necessarily the class is struggling. However, the current balance philosophy, blue adjustments over time, not decision set in stone. Unholy doesn't have the strongest deck last, you need to tone back. So that they're increasing Blightfang to a 4 mana 3/4. This card has been very, very strong. But it actually warps the meta so much that it's often cut. The reason why is this card just ruins other tempo decks. So if you're playing pure Paladin against Unholy and they slap down the Blightfang against your 4 minions, it's over. You're not going to be able to recover from a 3 mana, 4 2/2s and a 3/4. It's just way, way too strong. So even though, because the meta gets so warped by this card, it often doesn't actually seem that good and people are playing around it, the card's overall power is very, very strong and kind of makes Unholy too good in the tempo matchups. So I think this is a reasonable nerf. So far, so good. We'll get to the next one. So High Cultist Balsamith. It's back up to 5 mana. I played this card at 5 mana. It's okay in the value undead control list. It was at 5 mana, but the problem is at 5 mana you can't play a 3-drop and then revive it for 4 mana. So the problem is this is another card that this reduces the keeps the high roll strong, but the low roll worse. And this makes the card more polarizing. This is really bad, I think, for Undead Aggro Priest. I think I saw Toneberry, who's a big fan of this archetype, commenting on just not liking the nerf. And I'm not really a fan of the nerf. I think I would maybe, prefer lower the stats, something along those lines. I think I like the card better at 4 mana. The high roll is not going to matter, but the low roll matters a lot. And when you do that, it's kind of design where the high roll stays the same, but the low roll get the worst. What does that do? It creates polarization. Now, if you're a fan of polarization, maybe you like that, but I think generally people say they're not a fan of polarization. So I'm not as much of a fan of this nerf. Next, we got a Nubicon. And it's instead of gain 8 armor, it's gain 5 armor. This means you can't just play this and go into Underking. You have to play something like the 2 mana spell. I can't. My chat told me I can't pronounce it right, but Chitness plating. First, then you'd have 9 armor, and you could do the pop off. So you have to do setup. So here's what's hard about this, because this card could easily make a comeback. But the problem is, right now, this deck is now much, much worse against aggro. There are so many games where you need to slap this down as soon as you can, and you're at like 8 life, and you put a giant Zoc in the way, and it's right before your opponents can deal with it. And that's why you can, beat Unholy at a 35% win rate and not a 20% win rate, because otherwise you're just auto losing. So what the problem with this nerf is, what you're going to find is when you nerf all, there's a good chance this deck comes back. It's going to be dead for a while, but the good chance is what happens is we have things like Relic Demon Hunter, Control Piece, Blood Dominating Ladder. Aggro gets annihilated. Nobody wants to play aggro anymore. Then all of a sudden, a Nubicon makes the comeback because it's the ultimate anti-control tool. But then what happens? So you have this more polarized experience where your good matchups are really good and your bad matchups are really bad. And I think the problem with the Druid is, like, I think that's inevitable to some extent, but I like it when you can pull off a win against aggro and the control decks can pull off a win against Druid. I think, I thought, so Blood Death Knight had, for example, a 40% win rate against Druid, and Unholy had about a 68% win rate against Druid. I felt it was actually a little better than that for Druid, because I played the matchup a ton on ladder, and this will just increase that polarization. Druid could easily make a comeback after doing bad for a while. I think this card is not dead, but it requires a greedy meta. The reality is, it's very easy to get a greedy meta because there's no Druid to punish. Druid is the ultimate greed. So what can happen is, for a while, people are playing aggro, people are playing control, then all of a sudden the control decks just start annihilating the aggro decks, the greed comes back, and then we have this. So I would have preferred this just stay. I know the Noob's PR team was not doing very well, and people were just calling for nerfs for him over and over again. I really like this card. I think it's fun. By the way, your Zoc is not going to be very good anymore. So if you're a Zoc fan, unfortunately, you're not getting Dust Nerf. So this is another reason why I like. But I do, I like this card, and I think it's fun. And I'm kind of disappointed that it's being nerfed, but I will adapt. But yeah, this card could easily make a comeback, but it's bad right now. It's going to be bad for a week, I'd say, and then who knows. So next, we've got Scribbling Sonographer. This is another nerf I'm not really a fan of. Why? This at 7, I think I saw Zeddy post something where he's like, oh, it's still 0. And that's true. But if you've played against this deck, there are some hands where they barely pull this off. So what does this nerf do? It's kind of the same issue with the Nubicon. It makes the high rolls the same, but the low rolls much worse. You're gonna low roll, like you're gonna be playing against Rogue sometimes now with the 7-mana Scribbling Sonographer. They're gonna have 2 of these in their hand. They're not gonna be getting them down, and you're just gonna be like, wow, I just played some minions and won. How did that happen? And it's because they had two Sonographers in hand. So it's a thing of, this kind of card is not, this kind of nerf on this kind of card is not ideal. Now, what do you nerf in Rogue? I don't know. Like, do you nerf Location again? Do you nerf Concoctions? Yes. But I wasn't as much of a fan of this nerf. Rogue's a tough one to nerf. I really didn't think Rogue needed a nerf, but they've been kind of doing nerfs, and they want to nerf a little bit of everything, so nobody feels left out. So they decided to nerf this. We'll see what it is. I think Rogue's going to be decent, but it's hard to say how good it is. It's not the best right now, but it's good enough. It's a good, you can do top 20 legend with it. So I'm not sure. I don't feel great about this nerf, but it's probably Rogue's gonna be just fine. Next we got Symphony of Sins, gone to 5 mana. It's still Discover. I would like this to be a thing of you could select any one. I think the hard part about this card is you have to play this when you're behind on tempo. That being said, at 5 mana, it does make a big difference because you can possibly play it in a spot a little bit earlier and then do something the following turn. So this breakpoint could matter. Is Symphony of Sins powerful enough to just auto win the game? I thought so if you got to it, when I first saw the card, but after playing it a few times, I'm not sure. But I am a fan of this buff. Once again, I kind of would like if they made the technology where you could discover 7 and figure out, which movement you wanted to play. But that being said, I think a good buff. This card's really fun, and going to 5 mana will make it a lot more playable. From the depths, reduce your bottom cards to 5, reduced by 2, then Dredge. Some people are saying this is actually a nerf. I'm not sure. I do know 4 mana cards are really annoying to play in Warrior because they already have so many good 4 mana cards. So I think people are underestimating how much the 4 mana versus 3 mana breakpoint matters. Will Control Warrior still be able to work with this? Maybe, maybe not. This is a sort of net 10 mana. The old one was kind of net 15. Like you could net where you 10 mana for 3. This was 15 mana for 3. So that is compared to the old one, still a lot less. So the card is better at 4 mana if you could just save up the 4 mana. I'm very pessimistic about Warrior making a comeback in the control meta, but some of these Rift cards, people have been making tempo Warrior lists, so you never know. But I'm kind of skeptical. I think it's weird how afraid they are to bring this card back, and they're just they've been just unnerving Warrior over and over again, and Warrior just still is in the garbage. I think it reminds me of Nagamage, where they unnerfed Nagamage and it's garbage. So I think there's been so much power creep in the last year that this card fully unnerfed might not even matter. So it's kind of a thing of this is lip service Warrior, we're trying. I think Warrior's going to still be not very viable. But that being said, this Chorus Rift buff I think matters a lot more. +3 to +3 to +2/+2. That actually isn't inefficient the way it was at this, and especially when you combine it with the Rift effect, you can actually get a lot of stats. So you run maybe that 6 mana card, and all of a sudden there's some interesting high rolls that you can hit. And finally, they made Demolition Revenator. Oh, there's 2 more. Tradable. I'm kind of glad that a lot of people hate tech cards. I think Relic, Demon Hunter, and Miracle Rogue are going to be OP, so I kind of like making a control deck that I run 2 of these. I'm a lot more sadistic of a player, that I like ruining people's day with cards like this. But I understand the philosophy where people don't like tech cards, so they don't like this card to be better. I thought they were going to make it a 3 mana card, but at tradable, it is not a dead card in your hand. You can trade it, and you can sort of say, okay, this is not going to be as much of a low roll in matchups where it's not relevant. And finally, they made Rotten, not finally, I keep saying finally, Rotten Applebomb, 1 more health, 1 more life. This is kind of power adjusted and is an undead. This card might see play. It's hard to say, but if I could see in a deck that wants to revive something like Priest, you could revive this with the Bone Collar. That is a lot of healing. So this card, I think when Priest had 40 health with Renthal, this kind of card is more relevant because you could use your life total as a resource. The problem is at 35 health in Hearthstone, it's still really hard to use your life total as a resource. Blood Death Knight can use your life total as a resource a lot better because of the Vampiric Bloods, which is part of the reason I really like playing Blood Death Knight. But I think Priest will have a hard time with this, and I don't think Blood Death Knight really needs this card. It has things like Blood Boil and things like Vampiric Blood. But that being said, reasonable buff. We'll see how it goes. And finally, they reverted the old Pandarian to 1/2, 1/3. John Braze Turtle Rogue is no longer viable because there's too many rogue cards, I think. So I think they've done the math and they say, okay, you can't without Brand and without this, so they might as well put it back. So a reasonable revert on nerfs. So that's in my conclusion. You can see some of these nerfs I'm a fan of, some of these nerfs I'm not a fan of, and I think that the big thing is, polarization, and some of the buffs just sort of feel like lip service, and then some of them. So what do I think is going to happen in the meta? I think Relic Demon Hunter is going to be insane. Remember, in the first week, Relic Demon Hunter was insane, and then people figured out Druid, and then Druid started punishing. So no Druid, other Demon Hunter decks nerfed. What does that mean? Relic Demon Hunter. It's the ultimate anti-greed now, and it also can do well against a lot of aggro decks because it has those control tools. So I could see that deck absolutely being completely dominant in the post-nerf meta. That's my prediction. You heard it here. Unholy, we'll see how it does. And we'll see. But I think Death Knight in general is going to be strong. But what is the strongest? We'll see. But yeah, overall, I'm kind of iffy on the nerfs. I don't completely hate them, but I don't love them. It is what it is. So this is we'll see. I'll be trying out some Warlock, seeing, does the 5-mana buff matter? But we'll have some fun. But yes, see you guys around and see you guys on the ladder.